Hi, I'm Cynthia Schiller. Please like and subscribe. So it's Friday night, and I want to spend it with you. So we're going to talk about Marilyn Monroe. Does she have any personality disorders? First, I want to talk to you about my narc neighbors. If you've been following me, I've been telling you some stories. Some of us wonder, should we hang around with people like this? Depends on who you are, what the relationship is. We're going to deal with narcissists or people with borderline, histrionic. We're just going to deal with them. I live next door to some. I've been helping him out. So he was going to, take his son for dinner and invited me along. I didn't know for sure if he was going to pay. It kind of sounded like it, but I'm like, yeah, why not? And part of it is he needs a ride there. So not a big deal. I'm not involved with this person, so I'm detached. It's very important to stay detached, but we do help each other out. Some people with mental illness can be pleasurable to hang around with until they use you or until they let you down. So if you're in the mindset where you don't care, like I didn't care if I was going to eat at a restaurant tonight or not, but I also put off a few hours waiting, and they just blow you off. And not a big deal, helps me with my diet, but just something to be aware of when you deal with these people. You have to be in a different kind of state of mind that you're going to be let down. You can't count on them. They're going to be rude and not update you. And it's not that big of a deal. But if it was like my boyfriend or my husband, it's a big deal. You should count on those people. But we're going to talk about Marilyn Monroe because, a lot of us, we see these famous people and we're envious of them. A lot of times we're envious, whether it's her or somebody else. We wish we had that life. Well, Marilyn Monroe, did she have borderline personality disorder? Let's look to it a little bit deeper. A lot say yeah. Modern psychiatrists believe that she did have borderline personality, classic textbook. It's common knowledge that Marilyn suffered from a lot of psychological issues. She was also diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but more about that later in this video. But she was born Norma Jean Mortensen. Her childhood was filled with trauma. She was born June 1st, 1926, and she was an illegitimate child and never really got to meet her father, and the identity of her father is still shrouded in mystery. We're not exactly sure who her dad was. Now, her mother was named Gladys Baker, and she struggled with her own things. Gladys was born in a poor family, married at the age of 15 to a man who was 9 years older, and he was abusive. So sometimes, in the narcissistic relationships that I've dealt with, they do choose somebody quite a bit younger. And sometimes too, usually, not always, but usually the man's older and the woman's younger, not always. But she might have needed somebody to escape her trauma. So she might have latched on without really thinking through who she wanted to be with. That's how all this mental illness and abuse and all this stuff kind of twists and turns through life. So her mother, Gladys, had diagnosable paranoid schizophrenia. And she even had a mental breakdown while living with Marilyn and was institutionalized. So the rest of her life, she was in and out of hospitals and really didn't have contact with Marilyn. So that can be traumatic. And usually trauma is what causes this mental illness or mental disorders. So she moved from foster home to foster home and had 12 sets of foster parents. So her whole upbringing was very unstable. She was also sexually abused while in these foster homes and struggled with some dyslexia, struggled with pretty pronounced stutter, also had nightmares. And due to those nightmares, she had a hard time sleeping. Everything is all intertwined. And as you're going through this, just like when we're going through our relationship with our abuser, it's causing brain damage, which can lead to mental illness. And that's why it's important to stop it now. Because it affects how we raise our kids, it affects how we interact with people, and it's just a chain reaction. That's why it's flourishing, all this mental illness. So during her childhood, when she was talking about it, she said, I didn't like the world around me because it was kind of grim. When I heard that this was acting, I said, that's what I want to be. Some of my foster families used to send me to the movies to get me out of the house. So she already felt unwanted. And she continues on saying, and there I'd sit all day and way into the night. Up in front there with with the screen so big, a little kid all alone, and I loved it. So she needed to escape. She didn't mind being alone. That's when she felt comfortable. And sometimes with the push and pull that we go through, like narcissist, borderline is very similar to narcissism. More females have borderline, men tend to be narcissistic. And I'm going to do some more research for you guys, but I think it has something to do with the way we raise boys and girls. Boys, you're like, suck it up, don't show your emotions. Girls, you got to be pretty, or more in depth on that as soon as I research it a little deeper. So Marilyn wanted to escape all these abusive foster homes. So she married James Doherty just after she turned 16. So she was a very young bride. She also dropped out of school. So she's giving up on her hopes and dreams. And a lot of times you can see that people with mental illness do either drop out or not care as much about school, and they just want like a different kind of life. But they didn't last all that long. They divorced in September of 1946 because her husband James was against her modeling career. So usually when you enter into a marriage, you know, it's for life is what we think, but we don't discuss like the hopes and dreams and what we're willing to do, and they couldn't work it out. And also, you know, you wonder about this new supply. There's twists and turns in life. And Marilyn had some issues. She wanted to follow her dreams. They just weren't connecting. So I'm not going to judge whether it's right or wrong, but she wanted to go pursue what suited her. And that's where these marriages fall apart, whether she was entitled to do that or not. That goes against the vows of marriage. He also wasn't willing to accept that. She was seen as a sex symbol, so that causes strain on a marriage. So in 1946 of June, her original name was Norma Jean. She signed this contract with the modeling agency, or I apologize, acting agency, and decided to go with the name Marilyn Monroe. And she rose to fame in the 1950s, starred in many films that were pretty popular. So by 1953, she had become one of the most marketable stars in Hollywood. And she was known for her blonde hair, sex symbol, bombshell, and she had a lot of leading roles in films. So one of the most popular ones was out in 1953 called Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and her marriages. She rose to stardom, married twice. Both of these marriages did not last. Her first one was with Joe DiMaggio. And in the beginning, they were inseparable, but it turned bad. So DiMaggio had a temper. I can do more research on him, but he would lash out at Monroe and would get physically abusive. He's probably narcissistic too, to get that angry that they're not working things out. But that's where the reactive abuse comes in too. One little thing just sets everything off. And we all have certain traumas from childhood. Some it's gotten so bad, but DiMaggio also hated that she was a sex symbol. And that's why they ended up getting divorced. Her final marriage was to Arthur Miller, who was a playwright, and they were a little bit different, kind of an unusual couple. So it ended when Marilyn came across a secret letter that was written by Miller. And he had said that he was ashamed and embarrassed to be married to Marilyn Monroe. So that kind of ate at her ego, and she couldn't take it. Because they have that image that they need to uphold. Plus it is hurtful. Like I wouldn't want my husband saying that either. But a lot of people think that she was involved also with John F. Kennedy, who was our 35th president of the United States. And she did that during his presidency, allegedly. So her mental illness, let's talk about it. Borderline personality symptoms. So she had severe abandonment trauma when she was a child. And because of this, it left her insecure to the point she almost felt unlovable. She felt unwanted. And that can eat away at your soul. also eats away at your brain. So in her orphanage, she would make up stories. She would tell kids different stories, how she had loving parents, her parents just left for a trip. So she can't cope. She can't accept and express that she wasn't wanted, that her mom was schizophrenic and couldn't take care of her. She didn't know who her father was. So she didn't want to take that accountability of the truth. It's just too painful for her. So she made up stories. And she also had self-image issues based on her childhood, and she had to overcome those. And for her to do that, she created this character, Marilyn Monroe, and even changed her name, her hair color, even her personality was a little bit different. So she has this newfound persona, her rise to fame. She's successful now, but she still can't find happiness. She still can't find happiness. And that's why when we think about a narcissist or somebody with borderline personality, they're just not happy. There's this emptiness that they feel. And a lot of it goes back to that childhood trauma. They just have this hunger for love that they can't satisfy. And mental illness also ran in her family, especially in the females. And that, along with her childhood trauma, is just the perfect recipe for a psychological disorder. So there's this one psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, and he suggested that Marilyn had schizophrenia. It seemed to him that there's two different people inside her. If Marilyn had a personality disorder and had two personalities, there's a possibility that one of the personalities triggered the suicide. And there are conspiracy theories, so it's kind of up to you what you believe on that. But she definitely was suicidal. And whether she did the final one or not is hard to tell. So in 1961, she underwent surgery. She had endometriosis, and she was hospitalized for 4 weeks. She had crippling depression. So during her surgery, you know, her depression increased. She probably wasn't getting her supply from being out in the world and famous and adored. She needed time to heal. Her mortality might have been kind of set in her face, and she's kind of wondering what life was all about. So Marilyn, like I said, had textbook characteristics. So what are the characteristics of borderline personality disorder, which is also known as BPD, and how they are manifested for Marilyn? So there's a frantic effort for them to avoid real or imagined abandonment. And that's the thing, like when we're dealing with our abuser, some of this stuff is imagined. You know, we can be like, I'll be there for you for always. And they're like, yeah, everybody said that to me. You're just going to leave. And it's almost like self-sabotage, to where they push us away and we're like, we're trying to be there for you, or we're trying to communicate with you. And it's something in their brain that with the low self-esteem and the brain damage. So there's also a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships. And these are characterized between idealization and devaluation. Now, narcissists do this too. It's known as splitting. You're either seen as all good or all bad. You don't get credit for doing some good things and messing up a little bit. Once you tick that scale, you're discarded. You're worthless to them. Sometimes they can hold grudges forever. And sometimes it's not even over real things, or misinterpretations can cause it as well. So Marilyn had bounced relationship to relationship. 3 marriages all ended in divorce. You think about the new supply, this is the kind of stuff they're going to go through, whether it's a narcissist or somebody with a borderline personality disorder. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. You guys are on this channel because you know it doesn't work. And it's toxic, it's destructive. She also had an identity disturbance, unstable self-image. She didn't really know who she was. And this was, in my opinion, heightened because she's adored out in the world. And then the people who know her ups and downs, you know, people who know me know who I am. She's got two different personas, and she's kind of splitting into them too, with her mental illness. Sometimes when you, just like the narcissist, they say their lies so many times, they start to believe it. And so Norma Jean, like I said, reinvented herself. She thought it might help her, so she could get all the love, all the attention that she craved so badly. And she had felt deprived for her whole entire childhood. She also had one of the traits is impulsive behavior in at least two areas that are potentially self-damaging. So the impulsive behaviors could be excessive spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating, and sex and substance abuse were significant themes in Marilyn's life. She also had recurrent suicidal behaviors, even her gestures or threats, self-harming behavior. And she did make numerous suicide attempts. She's on top of the world, guys. Super famous, beautiful. Men falling all over her. And she's suicidal. They're that unhappy. They can't find happiness with all the money in the world and pretty much any man that she would want. People catering to her. People would, she feels lonely, but she could talk to anybody and they would be excited to talk to her. And she feels lonely and empty. She doesn't feel worthy and she doesn't feel a connection with people. That's why our narcissists often, they're trying to find this connection that they can't find. There's problems with their neurons, that it's not connecting. It's not going to the next level. Everything's superficial. They don't get vulnerable. They won't let you know the true them. So, there's also emotional instability with people with borderline personality disorder. No matter what in their day-to-day event, they can have intense episodes of sadness, irritability. They can feel anxious. This can last hours, sometimes maybe a few days, not usually where it continues on for months. It's usually a few hours to a few days. So she was fired from her last movie. She was sued by Fox. The studio said that they started smearing Marilyn, and that's, you already have a self-image problem. Now you're being smeared. The whole world knows your business. And there was negative propaganda about her, especially related to her mental illness. Just like our narcissists or people, a lot of times they don't want to hold on to that. They don't want to accept that something might not be quite right with them. And this probably affected her in the worst possible way. Might have even been her final blow. So she had these chronic feelings of feeling empty inside, and her lifestyle showed that. And it's just destructive. So, she's hurting people along the way, using people along the way. She had a lot of anger, difficulty controlling. She could have, outbursts sometimes. And there's a lot of stress-related paranoia, severe dissociative symptoms. And she, in her death, her health started to decline. She ended up dying August 4th, 1962 at only the age of 36. And, there is evidence that she developed an addiction to barbiturates, which are painkillers. She took those for endometriosis, and had 40 pills in her stomach. So if you guys ever struggle with any type of illness where you do need painkillers, try to be really cautious of, becoming addicted to that, because it'll change the way you think. And and addiction is a really hard thing to overcome. So she also had sleeping pills and alcohol together. Sleeping pills and alcohol can be deadly sometimes. So be careful on that. If you're sad and wanting to take some, you know, a few sleeping pills just because you're tired and want to go to bed, be careful of the things you mix. So sometimes people mean to kill themselves and sometimes people don't. Read the contraindications, read what you can and can't do and the outcomes, and just know what you're doing. So she really had very little support. People were probably only after her money, didn't really care about her like she needed. And she just died alone in her heart. So she had all this fame and success, and she didn't really have anybody to turn to. No one to convince her, like, it's going to be okay. Hang in there. So with you guys, I want you, if you ever get super sad, remember 988 is a suicide hotline. You can also reach out to me. There's free help available. That's 988 is the phone number in the United States. You can Google things. And it's just sad that the mental illness that is going on. We got to think about this stigmatizing mental illness. Just like I had said with my neighbors, I still help them out. I don't get involved with them. It's nice tomorrow. I'm going to pay him, but he's going to fix the rotors on my car. So we kind of help each other out. We live in this world, but even though he's super cute, I'm not going to date him. I'm just not. And it's sad because he's fun, cute, but no, I know that would be terrible, toxic, and I'm not going to put myself in that situation. There's people in our families that might have mental illness, and that's why boundaries are important. Whether it's a healthy relationship or a toxic relationship, you need your boundaries. Just like with the narcissist next door, I have boundaries. There's certain things I will and won't do. There's certain things that are appropriate and inappropriate. You got to set it up and stick to it. So I just wanted to say, that Marilyn Monroe seemed to have it all. She had everything so much. She even had a personality disorder, but a lot of this, it just really honestly does relate to childhood trauma. So sometimes when you're getting to know somebody that you're dating, kind of ask them, ask them about their brothers and sisters too, because they're not sure about the genetic component so much. As you can see in Marilyn's life, there is some, I want to say recidivism. There is mental illness in her family, and it's hard to tell, does that come from being raised that way? She also went to foster cares, and was also sexually abused there. There was a conglomerate of kids that could have been abusive. And then that's where her abandonment issues came from. And it's kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy in her marriages. You have to be whole in yourself to have a healthy relationship. That's why work on yourself, get back to being who you are. Don't bring baggage into the new relationship or it's going to fall apart. And, you can discuss things. You can tell the person, like, look, you can tell them, I know I have abandonment issues. So if you could please, every Friday night, just give me a call, good night, or whatever you set up. It's okay to tell people that you want some reassurance, but don't start like blowing their phone up. Why aren't you calling me back? There's healthy ways to do it and toxic ways to do it. So we've dealt with all this reactive abuse. We have to rewire our brains so we can be healthy, but you guys can do it. And now they were talking about Marilyn's voice. Did she really talk like that? And she usually we know from movies was actually a trick the actress came up with to cover her childhood stutter. So there are survival techniques, and that was just why she could get past that stutter. And her favorite foods, I do want to look more into why people stutter, because it's probably something going on in the brain, but I want to see if it's related to that area where the emotions go. But she loved desserts, and was she schizophrenic? So two psychiatrists in February 1961 had said she was even forced to go to an institution in New York City, but she was released. So she did go to a facility. Some people often dissociate from reality, and could be bipolar. So she's kind of going through a lot of different things. Was she, why was she depressed? Because of the mental issues that we've discussed. And she's known to have fallen into deep depression after her talent agent had passed away. So trauma can affect us. If you guys have seen some of my slides on the brain activity, when we're a depressed brain is a lot different than a happy brain or a healthy brain. And sometimes that's like an overload of damage. Some depression is temporary, like if you just had a death of a family. Some of it, depending on our coping skills, it does take time. You have to go through the 5 stages of grief, which I have videos on. And sometimes it's so traumatic for us, we kind of get stuck in that depression. So really look for your support system. You can contact NAMI, NAMI, has free support people. And it's just really sad that people can get that sad that they want to take their lives. Like I said, there are some conspiracy theories, but she did have suicidal tendencies, and it is possible she took her own life. I know some of you on my channel get really sad, and we think about the person we were with, and we love them so much that some of you don't want to live, but that person isn't there for you. And don't give them your life. You have a whole life ahead. There's so many stories of people who have attempted suicide, and then they look back at a failed attempt and they're glad they're still around. Things do get better. And I know where you're at. I wasn't suicidal, but I felt like I was dying. I know the pain can be extreme, and it takes time. It takes time, but through learning, that it's not your fault, that, we don't need to keep ruminating. What did we do wrong? We did what we could, and we tried, we loved. And when you're dealing with somebody with mental illness, it's unpredictable. How can you make a mistake when something's unpredictable all the time? How can you cure something if you don't know what the problem is? Because the problem is going to be different tomorrow. So give yourselves a big hug. Topic requests are more than welcome. And I'll see you in the next video.